President Trump is systematically breaking down the Democrat Party. They're full of terrible ideas. They've got no leadership and they're running out of money. Why? Because he's drying up all of their sources and ratting out the ways that they are cheating. To help me go through this, I have Dr. Jerome Corsi. Dr. Corsi, thank you for joining me again.
Always a great pleasure. I enjoy your show greatly, and I truly appreciate your audience.
Absolutely. We appreciate your time. For those that don't know, Dr. Corsi is a writer and author. He also has his own show, and we'll make sure to put a link to that down below, Corsi Nation. Really, really great information. I want to talk later in the show about the Anti-Globalist Manifesto that you wrote. But something that has been bothering me, President Trump shut down USAID. It turns out it was a giant money laundering operation for Democrats, the CIA, the military industrial complex. A lot of people got rich off of taxpayer money. Now it looks like there's traction with this Act Blue and how they've been taking in foreign money and cheating and money laundering. Help me understand what is going on and President Trump's big push for election integrity.
Well, Act Blue is, I've taken it into the Department of Justice, actually, the entire scandal. And President Trump has announced that Act Blue is under criminal investigation. So the issue was basically a whistleblower, Sean Taylor. Sean was a police officer near Nashville, Tennessee, and he found that up through the waterways was coming drugs from the border and unaccompanied minor children being sold into sex slavery. When he investigated, he found out that there was a scam going on. The people who were running this scheme were getting out, buying houses for $100,000, and they were getting mortgages of $1 million that were booked on LexisNexis. And they showed up that the loan was made, but it didn't show up in the deed. In other words, this was money laundering. Somehow they managed to get the proceeds from the child sex labor and from also the trading of drugs into banks. And then by buying houses, they got so-called mortgage loans, these magic mortgage loans that were flowing to them in huge amounts, way above the loan to value of the house. Now, Sean also found the same kind of phenomenon going on in Act Blue. When the heads of Act Blue have reported would buy a house in Palo Alto, California for $1 million and get $50 million in mortgage loans out from the banks. As I saw this magic mortgage scheme, so I said, where did the money come from? Well, Mike McCormick, who's written 2 books on the calling for the impeachment of Joe Biden during the Biden administration, one called An Almost Insurmountable Evil. He was a White House stenographer with Joe Biden for 6 years. And he tied it to an agreement that the Biden administration made with Honduras in 2014 called this Alliance for Prosperity. And they made it with again, Honduras, who's the president of Honduras, now in prison for being part of the Sinaloa drug cartel. And the agreement was they were going to open the border. And suddenly in 2014, these 100,000 unaccompanied minors appear in the border. And we get the drugs flowing in from the Sinaloa drug cartel, and we get in fentanyl from China. So the linkage is, and I strongly suspect that once we get the financial records, we'll be able to determine that the Biden administration found a source of money to fund Act Blue. What they did is they got banks to take in the money from the sex trade, children's sex trade, and organ harvesting in the border. They got money that was involved with the Sinaloa drug cartel cocaine trade and the fentanyl from China. They put it into a bank, and then they funnel it up into the NGOs, non-governmental organizations like Act Blue, which have this huge funnel of money with its Democratic juggernaut, and it gets put into Democratic political campaigns, people running for office, gets put into Antifa and Black Lives Matter, and the drug money, the child sex money is all taken out through this magic mortgage lending scheme that the Democrats, I believe, have engineered in accordance with several banks. In fact, it looks like 3 Canadian banks are involved, including TD Bank, Toronto Dominion. And I have a report from the Justice Department Criminal Division that says from 2014 to 2024, TD Bank did not employ required financial reporting for money laundering. They were laundering over $10 trillion in money in TD Bank. I've got an official government report that states $10 trillion went through Dominion TD Bank without being accounted for according to money laundering scandals or standards. This is a huge scandal, and the Justice Department is investigating it.
Okay. This kind of reminds me of what Elon Musk exposed, where George Soros is putting up $1 million and then getting $1 billion of taxpayer money from Congress. He ends up looking like he's this philanthropist and putting up all of his own money. And really, he was stealing our money. That's kind of what they're doing. If they can get a $100,000 house and get a 10x loan, and then they dump that money in order to keep their evil people in power. I mean, it's arbitrage, it's leverage, it's illegal.
Well, I think if we, God's Five Stones, we're reporting this in God's Five Stones, our 501c3. That's GOD, no apostrophe in the S, and you spell out the word five, F-I-V-E, and stones is plural, god5stones.com. We are raising more money because I believe firmly that we can we can destroy the Democratic Party with this story. Once people realize the Democratic Party was using child sex labor and organ harvesting to fund its NGOs and its political candidates, I don't think the Democratic Party is going to continue to exist. I think this is just a crime that it's an unconscionable evil to think that you would take children and steal them from their parents, destroy their lives. I think what we're also going to find out in the Jeffrey Epstein case, now that we have the victims speaking out. So I think we're going to find massive governmental involvement. You can't run a drug cartel or a child sex trade without a bank because there's a lot of cash involved. And you can't put the cash in the back of a semi-truck, and drive up to a lunch stand and take out $100 bills to pay for your meal. You got to get the money into a bank. And so the banks are participating in huge amounts of money laundering schemes. We're finding that the Department of Justice is increasingly investigating these mortgage money laundering schemes. Another one was announced today, I believe, against this woman in one of the government departments that Trump tried to fire. And then Loretta James is under investigation. All these people are under investigation. Mortgage and Adam Schiff. Mortgage fraud seems to have been something the Democrats were utilizing. Yeah. And it's an astounding story, but we're able to document it. And the Department of Justice is taking it seriously. It's not just that they stole your identity to make contributions in political campaigns, but the Democrats were using this money in billions of dollars to go into supporting NGOs, non-governmental organizations whose purpose was to destroy America. And the Democratic Party has evolved from being a communist party to being a treasonous party, or a party that's in fact a narco and child sex trafficking pedophilia party. The Democratic Party's got a lot of problems. And I don't think it's going to go down with the American people once the Trump administration fully investigates and brings the power of the Justice Department to bear on criminal indictments.
Yeah, I look forward to covering that here on the show. I didn't Chase Bank have to pay like $290 million to Jeffrey Epstein's victims for allowing him to money launder?
Yeah, you're going to find that the Jeffrey Epstein is also going to be a massive money laundering scheme. International banks were involved. I'm hearing that Deutsche Bank might be involved. I can't prove that yet, but I've got good suspicions international banks were involved in Jeffrey Epstein's schemes. There were massive foreign government involvement. There was massive intelligence agency involvement. And these victims are going to be the key to telling the story. The victims will give the list of who were the criminals using the Jeffrey Epstein system. It was a massive intelligence operation that was again funded with money laundering, and it was designed to compromise people in order to be able to, film them having sex in compromising situations for blackmail purposes. This is going to be an evil, evil scheme, and I think I'd well advise Donald Trump to get on the right side of this one, which is we need the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'm going to put a direct link to God's Five Stones so people can read about that and donate. Help me understand this. Last week we get this incredible bombshell report. Trump's tariffs are working. Nearly $1 trillion a year could be brought in. The Congressional Budget Office, which usually goes against Republicans and is ultra conservative, they're saying, wow, these might actually pay down $4 trillion of national debt. And then within a couple of days, there's this lawsuit that goes through saying it's illegal. The chief executive doesn't have the authority to negotiate on behalf of the United States. He's ended wars with this. He's brought in like trillions of dollars of trade, almost $1 trillion of new income to the United States. And now it could all be shut down. Your thoughts on that?
Well, and bringing back manufacturing too, which he's doing an investment back into the United States where it belongs. Trump is trying to restore our fiscal soundness, and he's trying to restore the middle class into jobs the middle class is designed to take. Now, it's another anti-Trump judge trying to make a universal declaration way beyond the judge's authority. Tariffs are in the Constitution. In fact, they're one of the very few mechanisms the Constitution specifies that the federal government can use to raise revenue. The Internal Revenue Service is not in the Constitution, neither is the Federal Reserve. They both came in 1913 under Socialist President Woodrow Wilson, who was an Hegelian. At Princeton, you had Woodrow Wilson teaching Hegel's theories, which were a predecessor to Marx. So again, the tariffs are in the Constitution. The president has the authority to negotiate them. It'd be a travesty. The Supreme Court needs to take this immediately and restore the authority of the chief executive officer of the country to, in fact, exercise Article 2 powers for the benefit of the nation. This judge is not authorized in the Constitution to try to overturn this kind of a presidential action. I think it's a disgrace, and I hope the Supreme Court acts quickly.
Yeah, I read yesterday that in Biden's 4 years, they had to request an emergency hearing. Trump's already had to do it 22 times in 7 months. You can just see how they're trying to strip his authority, humiliate him, neuter him, make him not the chief executive, but just like a trophy. Becoming president as a trophy now.
Well, all the Democratic Party is doing and these judges are doing is destroying their own credibility. The American people are not going to tolerate this. American people are seeing that judges are supporting, Venezuelan gang members dealing narcotics. They're supporting MS-13, mother rapers, father rapers, child rapers who are plaguing our country with illegal crimes. The Democrats are supporting gender dystopia and gender operations on children who have not yet reached the age of puberty. Democrats are on the wrong side of every issue. They're destroying our cities. Donald Trump, I think, is doing the right thing to send in the National Guard and even the military in Washington. I think he's going to have to do the same thing in Chicago pretty soon. LA, we've got to get these homeless out of the streets. You can't have people defecating in the streets. These Democrats have destroyed the cities. I think the American people are tired of it. I think we want law and order. We want a restoration of, the traditional values of this country, which have to do with God and morality. If we want to have Democrats running, crimes of the nature they're running, letting, Soros funding judges who let criminals go after they're apprehended by police with bail that has no dollar value to it, release them back on the streets immediately. This only undermines law enforcement and undermines the whole quality of our ability to maintain law and justice in the country. Donald Trump is right to exercise his authority as, under Article 2, chief executive and also commander in chief to make sure that we have secure cities if the Democrats running these cities won't do it.
Losing weight can feel like an uphill battle, especially with the American diet. From nasty seed oils that hurt us to high fructose corn syrup that actually makes us more hungry. Americans have wrecked their gut health. This is where ThermoTrim steps in as a smart, science-backed solution. This USA-made fat burner starts by restoring your gut health. ThermoTrim has a gut bacteria found in thinner people, but not heavier Americans. ThermoTrim helps restore that so you can lose weight. It supports digestion and curbs cravings naturally. Have you tried other products to lose weight and change your health? I have. ThermoTrim is what my body needed. Get ThermoTrim to improve your gut health and start losing weight today. Visit redlineremedies.com or snap the QR code. Make sure to use code Gardner to get an additional 20% off today. We all feel better when we lose weight, and I want you to live a long and happy life. Okay. Let me ask you this. RFK Jr. was up on the Hill defending his decision to fire the head of the CDC for going against his wishes about vaccine safety, vaccine testing. They tried to trip him up, gotcha questions. I noticed that the members of Congress that received the most money from Big Pharma were the ones attacking him the most. Do you believe the lobbyists of Big Pharma write the questions that these members of Congress ask?
Oh, I have no doubt about it. They're supplied with questions by the lobbyists all the time. They're also supplied with money. I mean, how do you get Pocahontas, to being worth $68 million? We have too many millionaires in Congress. AOC is making millions of dollars now being in her position while she's railing against capitalism. We've got to have term limits. We've got to, and Harry Truman was right. The only way to make money in politics is if you're a crook. And the best way to be a crook is to sell out to the lobbyists. They'll be happy to pay for you, or to communist China. There's just too much money around right now that is being used for illegal purposes. And I think Doge was doing a good job of tracking it down, and President Trump is doing a good job of tracking it down. I mean, my solution to the entire bureaucracy, as well as move it all to Death Valley and give them all the Quonset huts and solar and wind that they want. The only way to get rid of this bureaucracy and to get rid of Congress, which is bought and paid for, is to expose the corruption. I mean, Nancy Pelosi making money with insider trading in the stock market. It goes on and on. Chairman Mitch McConnell married Elaine Chao. Her family is worth millions, if not billions, in China. And if Mitch McConnell didn't do what the Chinese wanted, her family in China would be dead. Mitch McConnell goes to China and he gets, blessed with millions of dollars from the Chinese. Too much money. And, when you get the Bidens who were obviously for sale, or Hillary Clinton with her Clinton Foundation, she stole billions of dollars from the Haitians, when the earthquake occurred, and they were running a child sex operation out of Haiti. I documented in my book, Partners in Crime. Clinton Foundation was nothing but a money laundering and money raising scheme, a bribery scheme. Well, Hillary was Secretary of State and she had her private email server so she could conduct business with nasty oligarchs all around the world and their criminal activities, pouring money as donations into Bill Clinton running Clinton Foundation while she was Secretary of State. That stinks. It stinks every bit as much as Hunter Biden accompanying and Joe Biden to Ukraine and then end up being on the board of Burisma. We've got far too much corruption and bribery in this country, and it needs to be stopped.
Did you see that this week it came out that Ilhan Omar, the congresswoman from Minnesota, two or 3 years ago, maybe had a couple $1,000. Then in like 2023, she's worth like 5 or 6 million. Now she's worth $30 million according to her records. But she was telling people as early as this year, I'm not a millionaire. I stand with you. You're telling me that her broke husband, who's her brother, magically came up with some business idea that's now worth $30 million. This thing reeks as well.
It reeks, totally reeks. And these politicians who come on, if you want to oppose the United States of America, if you hate America, if you hate God, if you support, the LGBT agenda, all the money in the world is available to you for people who hate America. Look, I've got reports. I'm going to start writing about these reports hopefully next week. The Communist Chinese were just caught money laundering billions of dollars into the United States through banks. That's going into political contributions and supporting NGOs and all the different causes that Communist China wants to do to undermine America. We're virtually at war with Communist China, and the banks facilitate the money laundering. This is the truth, and the politicians have their hands open for all the cash they can get, and we need to make it a scrutiny of anyone in Congress who's making these untold amounts of money and where they got it from, how they got it, what they're voting for, because they're not representing their districts anymore. Big Pharma also runs all these ads on television. And with these ads, they're not going to have any news reports from these stations opposing Big Pharma. But Robert Kennedy is doing yeoman's work. He's in there saying, I want the real evidence on the medicine, what the truth was about COVID, what the truth is about all these CDC recommendations, why we have all these emergency use applications of medications that have not been tested. We don't need to have medicine be simply for the profit of big pharmacy. And that we don't need that big pharmacy run our political institutions, which they're happy to do.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. I read today that 35,000 Americans applied to be a Border Patrol agent, and 110,000 Americans applied to work for ICE. Do you think this is just about the signing bonuses, or do you think a lot of Americans are waking up saying, wait a minute, I want to be a patriot. I want to make America safe again? Your thought, these are huge numbers.
Well, also the military recruitment is way up. Again, we don't have generals wearing dresses and lipstick. We've got an army that is really dedicated now under Pete Hegseth to being a warrior class and to fighting. I mean, this is, be the best you can be means develop your skills to defend the country. It doesn't mean, running a transgender parade down Fifth Avenue. And once the American people understand that we're going to have a military that is, loyal to the United States of America and dedicated to defending the nation, there are many, many Americans who will be delighted to join the armed forces, get an education, and serve their country. And it's the same with the Border Patrol. It's the same with police departments, fire departments, first responders. Americans will get out and do these jobs and be proud to do these jobs and serve the nation if they know they're going to be respected, supported, paid to do it, honored to do it, respected when they suffer injuries or have to give up their lives in defense of the country or their neighborhoods or their fellow citizens. Americans are loyal, but not under a negative agenda where the criminals are viewed as the victims. The Democrats have got it all wrong. And I think the Democratic Party is in the process of self-destructing. As far as I'm concerned, this Democratic Party can't go away fast enough.
Yeah, amen. I agree with that. I remember a year ago reporting on, hundreds of thousands of people crossing the border every month, the highest suicide rates we'd ever seen with Border Patrol. Now you've got literally tens of thousands of people signing up. Nobody's crossing into the border. It's like such a different country. What do you make of this situation in the Caribbean? A lot of people on the left are saying President Trump blew up a boat full of drug dealers and fentanyl and cocaine. Had those drugs arrived, that could have been thousands of dead Americans. So he blows this up to send a signal to the narco terrorists and the cartels. And now he's being called a war criminal. And Marco Rubio said, listen, we've gone onto the boats. We've done the arrests. The drugs keep coming. Blowing them up is the only way to get it through. That if you are going to run drugs to America, you're probably going to die. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think Marco Rubio is right. I mean, these Democrats are supporting everything evil that exists. Every evil that comes along, the Democrats are applauding. And the fact is, the backstory is that when this judge was going to put Donald Trump in prison over the Smokey Daniels trial, the Venezuelan gangs were volunteering to do the assassination of Donald Trump in prison. And I reported on that even at the time. So Trump knows these are evil people. He knows they were going to kill him if they could. So Trump is defending the country again. And Venezuela better understand that they don't have a pass to have boats bringing in their drugs into the United States at will. The drug dealing, it's like the voter fraud. It's not cute or clever. It's a crime. And these board of election officials who have these algorithms and these databases, which I've been after now for 2 or 3 years, and I think we've won the case on that, they're not clever. They're criminals. You can't have false codes in a database, and voters, they're willing to destroy voter integrity. Every idea the Democrats have massive mail-in votes, which is obviously a scheme for cheating. Everything the Democrats are supporting is criminal or destructive to America or insulting to God. And quite frankly, I've had enough of it.
Yeah, me too. Dr. Corsi, you're such a great writer. You really dig in. You do a lot of research. You've got this book with a great title, The Anti-Globalist Manifesto, Ending the War on Humanity. Help me understand, what's this book about?
Well, I've been wanting to get to work in Europe, and it's been, the Mueller investigation wanted to put me in prison because they thought I had tied to Julian Assange, and they were saying that they were going to bring me before a jury in Washington. I lied to the Mueller investigation. I was going to go to prison the rest of my life, or I could take a plea deal and say I did have a tie with Julian Assange that I hid to protect Donald Trump and Roger Stone, and they would go lightly on me. Well, that was in 2018, 2019. I prayed on it. I realized I could not stand before God and a judge and swear to a lie to keep myself out of prison. So I said, I won't take your plea deal. And they didn't indict me. They said they closed the Mueller investigation. Then about a year or so later, my wife, who had supported me, she ended our 32-year marriage by having an affair with the husband of her dead cousin, whom I brought to live with us in Argentina. Cousin died of medical problems. She had a double mastectomy and 3 open heart surgeries, and Monica started an affair with her husband in the house. And so now I'm going through that. So since 2018, my life has been one series of crises after another. But I mean, I stand resolved that I do it all again for the defense of the United States and defense of God. And I don't regret a moment of it. I think Monica was taken out of my life, so I go back to work. She wanted me to quit politics. Didn't want the FBI knocking on my door again. And I can attest to you that under the Obama and Biden years, any of us who supported God, United States of America, or Donald Trump were targets to be persecuted and prosecuted by the deep state. And I've experienced it personally. What I'm happy to say is that I'm still going, and we're going after the deep state now. We know from the Department of Justice that Obama and Hillary concocted the Russian collusion from whole cloth, and they had a Justice Department that went along knowingly on a lie to try to do a coup d'etat against Donald Trump. There needs to be consequences on that. That was treason. We know now that this drug laundering money has been going on rampantly. The Democrats have been violating every sane voter law that you can imagine. The Democrats have been supporting criminals and illegal immigration in our country, destroying American citizens. Our middle class has been devastated by the globalism and sending jobs overseas. So my whole idea has been that, and again, the financial resources have been lacking, but I want to see the next phase of my career hopefully be increasingly being contacted internationally. My concept is that Donald Trump is right. The only solution to human beings is peace through prosperity. We need a strong defense, but we need to make sure that we do not have these oligarchs thinking that all the money belongs to them, all the natural resources belong to them. They're transhuman and they're going to live forever. Xi and Putin talking about living 150 years and organ transplants and all the rest.
Yeah.
When the middle class of the United States is trying to figure out how they're going to make the next meal.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Putin's picked up on a hot mic telling Xi of China, hey, you can get these organ transplants and you can live twice as long. There's all these advances in medicine, and China is accused of organ harvesting every single year. So it does make me wonder if they're doing that.
Well, just ask the Falun Gong. I think you'll find plenty of evidence China is organ harvesting and has been for a long time. China doesn't care about its people. These people are, useless to China. China's middle class and aged are left to die, and China itself is ruled by an oligarchy that maintains its privileges. And this whole idea of transhumanism and transgenderism, that we're going to develop a superhuman class that combines themselves with computers and organ harvesting and super medicine, lives forever. This is just not God's intent. This place is not meant to be a paradise. This place is meant to be a place of struggle. But what's rewarded here, the only thing you can take from here is your experience. And I think it's best that our experience be on the side of God. I encourage people, 2 Chronicles 7:14, we need to get down on our knees and repent that we've let this country get to this point. And God will hear the prayer and heal the land. I think we're at the point where we need to implore God's assistance. Donald Trump, I believe, has become more spiritual since his assassination attempt. And I see a resolve in this second term that he's not going to stop. And he's not going to care. He's going to fight every one of these evils. And he's got to, I've known Donald Trump for 45 years. And I admire tremendously his ability to take a hit and keep on slugging.
Yeah, he is. This second term has been very interesting to cover versus the first one. It is like watching a different person. Dr. Corsi, I want to put a direct link to your show and your X and your books. I appreciate all that you do. I'm going to also put God's 5 stones spelled out correctly so people can find it easily if they want to support you on the election integrity and all of the different things that you are doing. Thank you so much for coming on, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Stephen. God bless.